I am so excited for this theory because this started out as just researching a somewhat confusing Harry Potter character to learn more about them and to see how they actually perform throughout the book. But the more I dug into her, the more I learned, and it completely changes how I am viewing major parts of the entire Harry Potter series. So strap in and sit tight. I am foreseeing that you're going to have your mind blown at least 3 times throughout the course of this video.
But first, you must broaden your minds.
Sybil Trelawney is one of the more eccentric Harry Potter characters that we get to meet. We know of at least 2 full-on prophecies that she does make. One about Harry Potter and one to Harry Potter. But beyond that, we get the impression that she's kind of making things up on the spot, that she doesn't actually know what she's talking about, that she's not a real seer, and so she's just trying to make things up and seem like more than she actually is. But after further investigation, I don't think that's the case. I think she is a real seer. And I think she really did inherit divination abilities from her ancestors. But not only that, I think she also inherited a family curse. When I first started planning out this video, my intent was actually for this to be sort of a seer batting average. I wanted to look at all the predictions that Trelawney makes throughout the course of the series and how many did she get right and how many did she get wrong. Unfortunately, I couldn't actually find any that she got wrong. I mean, she makes a lot of predictions throughout the stories, and like it's pretty much what she does. Every time that she shows up, she's spewing out some prediction or something that they should all know, and most of it sounds like rubbish, but a lot of it actually does come true. Now, some of it we actually can't determine whether it's true or false. Like, she'll say something and then we never actually address the topic again. I mean, she meets Neville and mentions that Neville's grandmother is sick. We never actually go to check in on the grandmother. Was she sick? Maybe she was fully healthy and Trelawney was wrong. Maybe she was sick and we just never find out about it and she just got better later. But we never actually find times when she is straight out wrong. And some crazy examples of when she's right. One prime example of a time when she seems like she's just making up something and it's pushed aside by the characters in the story, but it turns out to not just be true, but very true, is when she is invited to dine at Christmas with a group who is staying behind. She approaches the group in the dining hall and she's invited by Dumbledore. Dumbledore stands up and invites her to come join the table. And she counts the number and says she dares not, because if she joins them, they will be 13. And always remember that when 13 dine together, the first to rise will be the first to die. Nobody takes her seriously, and they say, we'll risk it. Come join us. And she hesitantly does join. But she's watching to see who rises first. Eventually, Harry and Ron rise together, and she's worried. Which of them rose first? The problem is, they were at 13 before she sat down. Ron would have Scabbers with him. And so with Scabbers included, they were at 13 prior to Trelawney. That means that when Dumbledore stood up to invite Professor Trelawney to join them, he was already the first to rise. And out of the group that was there, he does end up being the first to die. Now, you may have heard this one already, but there's more to that prophecy. You see, she doesn't start off by just saying, if I join you, the first to rise will be the first to die. She says, always remember that when 13 dine together, the first to rise will be the first to die. Always remember. Now, when I read that, when I was doing this research and I read that, I'm like, wait a minute. Why does she tell us to always remember this? Does this ever come up again? Yeah, it does. Later on in another book, in Order of the Phoenix, Harry arrives at Grimmauld Place. And he goes in and everyone greets him and they're talking and chatting. And then they sit down at table for a meal. And at that table, we have Harry, Ron, Hermione, Ginny, Fred, George, Bill, Molly, Arthur, Sirius, Lupin, Mundungus, and Tonks. 13. And they are having a nice meal together. And when I was reading this way back when, I had no idea there was something significant going on. But there was 13 of them dining together. Who's the first to rise? Well, in the middle of the conversation, in the middle of their meal, Molly and Sirius get into an argument about Harry, about whether he should be protected and guarded from what's going on, or whether they should share the information with him and let him be a part of it. And in his anger, Sirius rises from the table. He's told to sit back down, and he does eventually sit back down, but he was the first to rise. And out of those 13 people, he does end up the first to die. It happened again. Well, okay, so that's two circumstances. Maybe it's just a coincidence. But it kind of happens again. In Deathly Hallows, after the flight of the Seven Potters, when they're trying to get Harry away from his old home with the Dursleys and bring him to the Weasleys' home, when they arrive there after this horrible encounter that they had with Death Eaters, we have mostly the same group that dined at Grimmauld Place, except minus Sirius and minus Mundungus. But now they also have Fleur and Hagrid. Once again, 13. And Bill Weasley pours them all fire whiskey, and they are toasting to the name of Mad-Eye Moody, who unfortunately was lost in the Seven Potters' flight. And it's questionable whether this should count, because they weren't actually sitting, and so nobody actually rose. But it's 13 together, and they're kind of dining with the fire whiskey. So the question comes up, who was the first to rise? Well, the first to leave the group was Lupin. And sure enough, if you look at that group of 13 people, who was the first one of them that was lost at the Battle of Hogwarts? It was Lupin. Once again, the first to rise, the first to leave of that group, becomes the first to die. Now, to me, three circumstances. That proves to me that what Trelawney was talking about, she knew it was right. And she was right, but nobody took her seriously. Another instance where Trelawney's predictions turned out to be right, even though they seemed wrong, was in Goblet of Fire. At one point, she turns to Harry and says that he was clearly born in midwinter. Now, this seems like an odd prediction as it's looking into the past, but nevertheless, she makes that declaration. Unfortunately, he was not born in midwinter. As everyone knows, Harry was born July 31st, as the 7th month closes. So he couldn't have been born in midwinter. She's wrong here, right? Well, no, actually, I think she's right. Not that Harry was born in midwinter, but I think the person she was looking at with her inner eye was born in midwinter. You see, at the beginning of that conversation, it starts off with her looking at Harry and saying, "My inner eye sees past your brave face to the troubled soul within." Okay, at the time when I first read this, I thought she was just talking about Harry as if he was a troubled soul. He's going through so much, and he's troubled. But since that point, we have learned something very important about Harry. He's a Horcrux for Voldemort.
I'm a what?
Harry Potter is a vessel, and inside of him, the vessel, is literally a troubled soul. The troubled soul of Voldemort. At that moment, Trelawney looks at Harry and says, "My inner eye sees past your brave face, past the container that this Horcrux is in, to the troubled soul within." Voldemort is literally a troubled soul within Harry. I think in this moment, Trelawney's inner eye is seeing through Harry to the part of Voldemort trapped inside of him. So when she says that he was clearly born in midwinter, her inner eye is focused not on Harry, but focused on that troubled soul of Voldemort within him. And when was Voldemort born? December 31st. You really can't get much more midwinter than that. So I think Trelawney here, even though it seems like this is hard proof that she was wrong, I think her inner eye was right. Maybe she didn't know it, but we now do. We see that that troubled soul was not Harry. The troubled soul born in midwinter was Voldemort's. If all of this is not enough to prove to you that Sybil Trelawney is the genuine article, then honestly, I don't know what more I could say. To me, it is clear that she really truly did inherit the gift of prophecy from her great-great-grandmother Cassandra. The thing is, if she is truly a seer, a real seer, why is nobody else figuring this out and seeing her for what she is and taking her seriously? She says so many things throughout the books, and everyone just brushes her off? Why does nobody see the pattern here? See that she is right? I actually think we can discern exactly why nobody's taking her seriously. I think it comes along with her inheriting her gift of prophecy. And I think something came along with that gift. We know that Sybil Trelawney had a great-great-grandmother, Cassandra, who had the gift of prophecy. And we know that just the mere possibility that Sybil had inherited some of this gift is enough to get her an interview at Hogwarts. But we really don't know a lot about great-great-grandmother Cassandra. The books don't give us a lot of details, just that she was a seer and that her name was Cassandra. But we do know that the Harry Potter books, they take people from other areas and they bring them in as historical witches and wizards at times. Merlin, for example, he was a wizard in the Legend of King Arthur, and now he's brought in to be a historical wizard in the Harry Potter universe. So is there another location where we can find a Cassandra who was a seer? Yes, there is. In Greek mythology, there's a Cassandra who was the daughter of the king of Troy, and she was well known to be a seer. In fact, she might just be the most famous seer in the whole mythology. So this is a prime suspect to either have been Trelawney's great-great-grandmother or at the very least be an influence for her in the books. In either way, that gift is probably very similar to what we are seeing from that ancestor. And this seer Cassandra was actually very impressive. She knew that if they took Helen and brought her back to Troy, that it would start a war that they would not win. And she warned her family about this, telling them not to go take Helen. She also knew when the Trojan horse showed up. She told everyone, guys, it's full of Greeks. They're trying to get into our kingdom. And she actually goes and tries to burn that horse down. She also knew that Odysseus was going to have his voyage extended. He was going to face all these trials. She saw that before he even left. And she could look someone in the eye and tell them exactly how they were going to die. She was an amazing seer. If this is where Trelawney gets her powers from, this is an amazing source of power. The thing is, those things still happened. Cassandra warned them not to take Helen. They ignored her. They took her anyway. She warned them that the horse was full of Greeks, and they stopped her from burning it down and brought the horse into the city. She warned Odysseus. She warned people. She knew that Odysseus was going to face these trials. He still set sail. She warned people of how they were going to die. They still died in exactly those same ways. People ignored Cassandra too. The thing is, they ignored her because there's a second layer to her power. She was an amazing seer, but she also had a curse on her. She was cursed so that if she was to divulge her visions to other people, that they wouldn't believe her. Because of this curse, people wrote her off. They ignored her warnings as the musings of a mad person. They ignored her as somebody who wasn't quite right in the head. And they cast aside and they decided to risk it anyway. Does that sound like anyone we know? I believe that Sybil Trelawney inherited the gift of prophecy from her great-great-grandmother Cassandra. But I also think she inherited the curse. I think that when Sybil Trelawney tries to tell people about her visions, they're being cast aside as nonsense, as the musings of someone who's not quite right in the head, because of the curse, because she can't just tell them. They don't believe her. Now, she does have a couple of genuine visions that people do take seriously. And she does have a couple of students who see her as the genuine article, but most people do not. And even those circumstances, I think they kind of make sense. You see, Trelawney, her visions are clearly not as straightforward, as clear as the visions of her great-great-grandmother. That ability has been diluted through the generations. And I think the curse has been diluted as well. It's still there, so people are more inclined to ignore the musings of Sybil Trelawney, the seer. But I think the curse has weakened enough that when she has a particularly powerful vision, it can still break through. And people can still then take it seriously if they choose to. Okay, I don't know about you, but my mind was blown when I discovered all this information. I mean, I just wanted to know, how often is Trelawney right? And I discovered way more about her than I thought I was going to discover. I mean, so many times that I thought she was wrong and she turned out to be right, and so many predictions that carried forward and had influences on future books. It's crazy to me. I actually had to stop myself from doing more research to make this video because I've been looking into it every chance I got, and I knew that if I didn't actually stop myself, I may never actually get to this video. So if you found anything, or if you know of any circumstances where she made a prediction that turned out to be true in some amazing way, please let me know in the comments down below. Or if you know of something in the other direction, something that you think genuinely proves her wrong, let me know that as well. I want to know more about this situation. So keep the conversation going in the comments down below, and I hope you enjoyed this half as much as I did. Thank you for watching.